Hello, my fellow gnomes, and welcome to episode 3 of our doors tutorial. Now, at the moment, for a game about doors, we're rather lacking, well, doors. And, oh, look, I've just spotted a little gap. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding some doors in between all of these rooms. And, well, we're definitely going to need to patch up this gap that I've just spotted as well. So if we hit stop, and another thing we might remember is from the last episode, we created this art gallery, which we made a rare appearance. But if I run the game and I run it and run it and run it, I never seem to actually generate the art gallery. Now, the reason for that is a little bit of an oversight on my part. If we go into the get random, we'll notice I'm generating on line 12 a random integer. That's a whole number between 1 and whatever the total weight is. But we set the probability of the art gallery, its weight, to 0.1. So obviously 0.1 and a range starting at 1, we're never going to reach that number. So if we started at 0 and then change it from next integer to next number, so we can cover all numbers and not just whole numbers, we will actually be able to generate the art gallery itself. Although it's still going to be pretty rare at 0.1. So if we just bump it up to, say, a 0.6 and run it again, we probably have a higher chance of getting one. Let's see. There we go. We've got one generated over here for us. So that's fixed a little bit of a mistake that we made in the previous episode. But now let's talk about doors. So if we hit run, and we can generate some rooms for ourselves, and we're going to need to use this template part that we created to help us. So remember, we got these exit and entrance parts. Well, we're going to use these to position our doors as well. There's no point just building a new set of door for each and every room section. We might as well just build our door once and then have it automatically positioned into place. So while the game is still running, I'm going to add in a new part, and I'm going to need to anchor it at the moment because otherwise it's just going to drop to the floor. So make sure we anchor that part, and then I can position it where I want my door frame to go. Okay, so now we have a very basic little door, and what we're going to do is make sure we select all these parts. Now, it is a little bit hard to actually select stuff while everything's inside models. So what I use is we can actually click using the Explore window, and I can just click and select all of these. And then I'm also going to need to select the entrance part itself, because we're going to use that to line it up. So if I hold down the Alt key, which is what I've been doing, if I hold down the Alt key, I can select individual parts inside the model rather than just selecting the whole model. So if I hold Alt key down again, select that exit part, and then I hold the Control key down and I select all these other parts here. And then I'm going to press Control G, which will group it together. And then I'm going to copy this. So click copy, and then I can stop the game. Everything will reset. And then if I paste that back into the workspace, I now have my door model. So we can name that door. And we have this exit part, which is in the exact same orientation as our entrance and exit parts were. So if we look at it and we view the orientation indicator, we can see it's pointing outwards, just like all of these parts should be. These are all pointing outwards, so we know everything's going to line up. And we're going to name this from exit. We'll just call this primary. And all these other parts are all anchored as they should be. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go and create our door module script. So let's just move this down here out the way for now. And we'll go to server script service, into server, into room. And we're going to add a new module script, and we'll call it door. And then in here, we'll say local door equals a new table, and we'll return that table, we'll return door, and then we'll have a function inside that table. So function door.new. And the only parameter it's going to take is the room model that you want to place it inside. So just like with our rooms, right, we had to get the previous room to then line everything up. But we're going to do a very similar thing. So So we're going to say local door model equals, and we create a copy of that door we just created. So workspace dot door, and we're going to clone it. And then we're going to need to move it into position. So door model pivot to, and it'll be the room model we've been supplied with. And then we want to put it in the exit dot cframe. And finally, because we created a new copy, we need to add it into the world. So door model dot parent, and we'll set that equal to, and we'll just put it inside of the room model. And once we've created the door, we might as well give it back as well. So we'll return the door model that we've just created. So if we head back into our room module, and at the top, we're just going to need to require this. So on the very top line here, we can say local door equals require, and it's simply script dot door, because this door module script is directly inside of the room. So script dot door, and then we'll just access the door modules function. So inside of the generate function, once we've set all these properties for the new room, let's go and create a door. So local new door equals door dot new, and then we'll give it the new room that we've just created as its parameter. So once we've done that, we'll hit run and see if everything's working for us. So it should generate all the rooms as before. And if we look, we have got a door at the end of each corridor. So we've got one here, we've got another one here, and here, and so on. And they continue all the way through our rooms. Now, you will actually notice that the starting room doesn't have a door. That's because we placed it at the exit C-frame of each one. So if we want to place one at the exit C-frame of the start room, well, it's a little bit different because this hasn't got a previous room. So if we hit stop, we go into the main server script. We need something to set up the previous room before we start generating. So we can just do this manually, but we are going to need the door script, the door module script as well. So we say local door equals require, and that would be script.room.door. And then we can create a first door by simply calling the door.new function again and supplying it with the start room. And now if we hit run, we will also get a door in the start room, just like that. Fantastic. So we've got a door for each one, and that all looks pretty good. Now, there is obviously a problem here because if I come and I hit play, well, I can't actually open these doors. They're not going to do anything. They're firmly locked in place. There's just a bunch of anchored parts. So we want these to actually move, and that's what we're going to do next. So now that we have our door model, we just need to go and set it up for scripting. So we can click the model and we can see it's got all these parts in it. And the first thing we need to do is we're going to need to name the actual door part itself, the thing we want to turn. So we're going to name this door so we can keep track of it. And we'll also name the thing we put on the middle of it, on the front of it there, which is going to be our sign a bit later on. Now we'll notice door is currently anchored, which means it can't move. And now we actually do want to be able to move this part. We want to rotate it, but we don't just want to rotate it on its axis. Otherwise, it'd just be rotating like this. That's no good. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in an additional part. So if I duplicate the door, and I'm going to resize it so that it's just on the very left-hand side, like so. And we'll rename this duplicated part from door to hinge. And this one is we're going to keep it as anchored. But the door itself, we want to be unanchored. And then make sure that your sign part as well, make sure that is unanchored too. And then we're going to select the sign and we're going to click on the door and we're going to create a weld between them both. So go to model view, the model tab here, create, and we'll click weld. And then inside of door, you can see we've now got a weld constraint attaching the door and the sign together. And then we need to attach the door to the hinge. So click the door, hold down Control, click the hinge, and then we can create another weld between them, which we can now see inside of the hinge. So now if we're to rotate this hinge part, the door part will move along with it, and the sign part will move along with the door part. Now, in order to get this movement going, we need a way to activate it. We could have some sort of proximity prompt, but I'm going to keep things very basic and just use a basic hitbox. Now, we could use the primary part as the hitbox, but I think we want one a bit larger. So I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, resize it forwards a bit. So it's, what's that? 6 studs in front of it is probably fine. So whenever they enter into this box and when they touch here, the door can open for them. So we'll rename this part from primary to sensor. And then its properties will make sure that can touch is enabled. But the query and collisions we both want disabled still. And now with all of these things set, we can head back into our door module and start setting these things up. So the first thing to do is a way of tracking whether the door is open or not. And to do that, we're going to use an attribute. So we'll say door model set attribute, and we're going to call the attribute open. And initially, that's going to be false because the door isn't open, is it? And then when the door model dot its sensor part, when that is touched, we want to connect that to a function. Now, the touched function automatically tells you what part hit. So we'll save that as the hit parameter. And then we're going to need to check here if the door, if it's still open, and if the thing that touched it, we probably want to check if it's a humanoid as well, if it's actually a character, or it's possible there could have been just some random piece of debris that hit the door, in which case we wouldn't want the door to open. So first of all, we'll check if it was a humanoid. So local humanoid, want to see if the hit.parent, the parent of the thing that hit. So if it was a right hand, the parent of the right hand would be the character, and then we'd see if that character contains something called a humanoid. So if it's a humanoid, if humanoid, and then we'll say door model get attribute, and we'll check if the open attribute is still equal to false. And if both those conditions are true, then we're going to open the door. So we'll create a new function, door.open, and that will need the door model as an argument to it. And then we can call that function down here, door.open, and we'll provide the door model. And the first thing we want to do in the open function is actually change the value of the open attribute. So we can copy this line, and instead of making it false, we'll make it to true. That means when the hit, the touched event is next fired, this condition will be equal to true, and so therefore this bit won't run because it's expecting it to be false. So once we've done that, we're going to set up something called a tween, which allows us to slowly adjust the position or the property of any part in the world. And we're going to want to change its rotation. So we're going to set up a target C frame. We'll just call the variable C frame. And what we want to do is we want to change the door model dot hinge dot C frame. And C frame is a combination of both position and rotation. And you want to multiply that by a new rotation. So C frame dot angles. Now the exact angle is going to depend on the orientation of your door. So let's try 0 and then math.rad to convert from degrees to radians. 100 degrees. The number is however many degrees you want the door to open. And 0. Possible you might change this depending on the orientation of the door member. And then we need to set up a tween. Now we haven't got a tween service for this, so we need to create that. I always like to use my service at the top of the script. So local tween service equals game get service tween service. And then once we've gone to that, we can say tween service. And we can start setting up a new tween. So the object you want to tween is doorModel.hinge. And then there's lots of different information we can do to customize this using tweeninfo.new. But we're going to keep this really simple and just make it a simple half-second tween. And then finally, we supply a table, so curly brackets, and the object we want to tween. So it's the C-frame property, and we'll set that equal to our variable we just created, which was C-frame in all lowercase. And once we've created that tween, we can just say doorTween : play. So now we've done that, let's hit play and see if that's working for us. We've got a door here, and if I go up to it, oh, so the door has opened, but it's opened not at the angle we wanted it to open, has it? So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to hit stop here, and we're going to need to rotate it on a different angle. So if I look at my door, and if I click the door and I right click orientation indicator, I can see it's pointing, the front face is actually the bottom of the part in this case. So I think I will need to rotate that on the Z axis instead. So 0, so change it so it's 0, 0, 100 instead of 0, 100, 0. Play, go up to the door, and there we go. It's now opening in the correct orientation. And if I walk forwards to the next room, if we get close enough, the door will open. Obviously, you might want to sort of change the sensitivity of the hitbox by making it larger or smaller. But this seems to work quite well, so we can run at pace and the door will open up in time for us to walk through it. Now, obviously, we really want to have some room numbers on these doors rather than just this blank sign that we put on all of them. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, in order to get a number on these doors, we're going to need a surface GUI. So if we click the sign part, add in a surface GUI, and assuming that the front face, if we right click and show orientation indicator, you can see that the front face is pointing out. So that should mean if I add in a text label onto that front face, we can then see it like so. And then we'll set the background transparency to 1, the size to 1010, so it nicely is positioned correctly. The font face, we can use Guru. Make sure that the text is scaled, and then we could just have a number on it, 1, 2, 3, and that would show up like so. Obviously, you can customize this a bit more, but we'll just keep that as it is for now. And so in our door module script, we would actually need a number, because we need to set door model dot sign dot surface GUI dot text label dot text equal to some number, right? Where can we get a number from? Well, we're going to need to have the number as a parameter of this function. So we'll expect a number value that we can then give to the text object. So let's go about sending this number value when we call the door.new function. So if we head back into our main server script, we can see we've actually already got a number here, I, which is when we're looping through generating all of these rooms. So let's send I to this function here, the room.generate function. And for the first door, well, we know the number of that. That's going to be 1. Now, if this is the first door, then this can't be the first door as well. So we'll start this loop at 2. And then when we're doing the room generate, we'll send the I. So if we pop into our room script and make sure we're ready to receive the number, and then when we have that number, we can then send it to the door.new function. Let's hit play, see if that works for us. There we go. We've now got 1 on this door. And if we walk through it to the other door, we now see 2. And these will keep opening up for us all the way. If I was to go over onto the server and we go to some predetermined point, we can see we've got room 65 and so on and so on and so on, all the way to room number 100. Now we might want to add in a sound as well. That would be easy enough. All we need to do for that, I've already got a sound. I've named it open. You can listen to it here. Pretty simple opening sound. And then if we went into the door module script, when we call that door open, all we need to say is door model dot door dot open play. And there's one other thing you might want to do, which is to add some trailing zeros in front of the doors. Because at the moment it just says simply 1. You might want it to say 001. Although at least we can hear the sounds now. If I shut up for a second, you can hear it.
Nice.
There we go. So if we wanted some trailing zeros in front, that's pretty easy. All we need to do is in our door module script, inside the door.new function, we'll just do a quick check on the number here. So we'll say if the number is less than 10, then the number will equal 2 zeros, sorry, not number will equal 2 zeros combined with the number. The dot dot is a concatenation, which allows us to add 2 strings together. And else, if the number is less than 100, then we're going to do the same thing, but instead of 2 trailing zeros, we'll just have 1 trailing zero. And now if I hit play, we can now see it says 001. We can keep going through the doors, 002. And if I zoom ahead, we can see we have 036. And then the final door, if we can find it, we have 099 and finally 100. There we go. I think that is long enough for one video. We're going to be covering things like locks and items and all the good stuff later on in this series, but I think that should do us for now. So now we have our working doors connecting all of the rooms together, and I look forward very much to seeing you all in the next video. So I'll see you then. Goodbye.